Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Legal 500 webinar sponsored by Clifford Chance and Shiftshi Attorney Partnership, titled Green and Sustainable Finance in Turkey. My name is Joe Boswell. I'm a senior member of the Legal 500's in-house legal research team, and I'll be introducing today's webinar. We're taking a deep dive into one of the hot topics in the business world today, as environmental, social, and corporate governance investment prospects are significantly impacting the shaping of business strategy across many industries in Turkey and globally. Before we get started, I'd like to quickly remind the audience that the opinions expressed are those of the individuals only and do not necessarily reflect those of the organisations they're a part of. And now I'll spend a couple of minutes introducing our fantastic speakers. Sait heads the finance practice of the Shiftshi Attorney Partnership, where he's also a partner. He specialises in banking and finance transactions with a particular focus on project finance and structured finance. Claire Burgess is an experienced partner at Clifford Chance and an expert in capital market issuances, private placements and loans, with particular focus on the infrastructure and renewables sectors. Idil Gursel is an associate director for municipal and environmental infrastructure at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Nihal Yüksel is director project finance and business development at Kalyon Holding and has 13 years of experience in project finance, during which she's worked for Oyak Bank, ING Bank, Denizbank, Siemens, and CCN Holding. Ahmet Can Yakar is a managing director in ICBC Turkey's investment banking project finance department. His career prior to this saw him take on roles with Denizbank, UniCredit, and Jinet Group. And last but not least, Unai Karpuz is assistant manager of sustainable finance at İşbank, where she's been since 2006. In her current role, she's responsible for environmental and social impacts and risk management of investments funded by the bank in line with international requirements. So with the introductions out of the way, I'd like to now throw over to Sait to begin the webinar.
Thank you very much, Ben, for the introduction, and hopefully it will be a quite insightful webinar for everyone. So, just try to dive into the questions. I will start with Claire. So, Claire, Europe is the biggest and most active market in terms of sustainable finance products, with 46% of the bonds issued and 63% of the loans extended in the 2022 originating from Europe. Europe's success story is no surprise, as both the EU and the UK seem to have adopted an unreserved consciousness, which is distinguished in the way they establish pioneering legislation and simultaneously keep up with the global trends at the domestic level. As a legal advisor of a global law firm who led some of the most prominent deals and has unparalleled expertise in sustainable finance, what do you think are some of the pillars that help European market outweigh the rest of the global market?
Well, thanks, Sait, and hi, everyone. So I've got a horrible echo on the line. I don't know if someone can go on mute. So, I think Europe is indeed the largest market, although I would say I think there are lots of other markets soon to catch up with Europe, particularly, eyes on the US at the moment, given the summit that Biden is hosting on Thursday, which I'm sure people are aware of. Biden has moved incredibly quickly in terms of legislation from his move into office. And, I can see big changes and significant issues coming from the US in particular. And, we mustn't forget China and their action on climate, where, they have made a net zero confirmation and target. So, I think we are seeing a lot from Asia as well. And my colleagues in lots of markets, including Latin America and Asia, are also very busy working on finance transactions. So it really is a global agenda. I would say, why has Europe grown the quickest so far? I think obviously there's been a lot of new regulation coming out in Europe, which has been focused on the financial sector, which has focused the minds of the banks and funds on ensuring they are pushing funds towards sustainable investments. Now, Europe is always the home of regulation. We love regulation in Europe. And so, but you've seen almost every bit of legislation coming out of Europe has some sort of sustainability angle or agenda within it at the moment. Really pushing through, the sustainable plan that the European Commission is following. So I think that legislative backdrop is really focusing people's minds on the finance as a product, and is causing the European market to flourish. And that's across, as you said, it's across loans, it's across bonds. We're seeing green swaps, green securitizations. So we're sort of covering, it's a very mature market in Europe, and we're covering all the sorts of finance products that are available. We are covering them in green at the moment.
Thank you very much, Claire. I mean, moving from the global to Turkey, it is the most common forms of sustainable financing in Turkey have been credit lines and loans made available by IFIs. In the current market, EBRD is one of the major players with financing providers of renewable energy and resource efficiency investments of private sector enterprise in Turkey. How do you find ESG criteria impact investment decisions and portfolio construction of EBRD? Which ESG issues do you investigate in corporate evaluation, and how do you assess their relevance to a company's long-term business prospects? And how do you carry out an investing across a traditional portfolio with an aim to finance the transition from carbon-heavy business to green business, and therefore track corporate performance towards low carbon and climate resilient market strategies?
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to mention with our green economy transition approach. Investing in green became such a priority in the bank that they transformed into clear goals and strategies. In 2015, we launched Green Economy Transition 1.1, where we have targets that are set for the bank's investment. In 2022, it was targeted to have the bank's business volume for green investments increase up to 40% from 30% in 2015. And annual green financing will increase to 4 billion in 2020, and a cumulative financing of 18 billion business volume between 2016 and 2020. The same priorities were also reflected in the bank's investments in Turkey. 5.8 billion euros are invested in 155 green economy transition projects to date since 2009, the opening of the Turkey office. Despite a downturn in 2020, where the bank's priorities shifted to address the effects of COVID and support companies' resilience during the crisis, overall, GET projects made 45% of all the investments in Turkey since 2019. Building on that, the bank announced GET 2.1, which is the EBRD's new approach that will start from 2021. The new approach aims to accelerate the transition to a green, low carbon and resilient economy, and to contribute to achieving a net zero carbon world by 2015. Accordingly, our targets have been amended. The bank uses its policy dialogue angle to apply the new approach and focus on long-term and low-carbon strategies and greening financial systems and build capacity and awareness. All bank investments are screened to make sure they are in line with the Paris Agreement. We are increasing capacity to support countries, regions, and developed sectors for low-carbon and climate resilient strategies. We are scaling efforts to mobilize concessional co-financings. We are partnering in Green Climate Fund, EU, and others active in this area. So the themes of this are green financial systems, integrating climate-related factors in operations of financial institutions, industrial decarbonization, supporting low-carbon circular materials, products, and related services, sustainable food systems, energy systems integration, scaling grid integration, low carbon power, demand side management, energy transport system, and production of decarbonized fuels, cities and environmental infrastructure, which I'll talk in a bit, to develop low carbon transport infrastructure and modes, sustainable connectivity, developing low carbon transport infrastructure and modes, green buildings, promoting new approaches to scale up investments to move towards zero carbon building stock, and natural capital, which involves identifying opportunities from nature-based solutions. So as a result, the bank seeks green finance ratio of over 50% of the bank's annual investment by 2015, and at least 25 million tons of emissions avoided over the same period. Indeed, green is not the only theme of the bank. We identify and prepare to support investment which we can be additional, such as not only financially additional, but also supporting gender and youth inclusion, improvement corporate governance of the companies we invest in, etc. We support investors' green projects through improving the environmental, social, and governmental practices to the best practice levels. We continuously monitor environment and social standards. We receive reportings about up to the bank standards and also complying the local requirements. EBRD's flagship Green Cities program supports municipalities' green investments besides corporates. The cities involved in this program, we have 2 cities from Turkey, identify key environmental challenges, develop a Green City Action Plan to tackle with the environmental challenges, and make the Green City Action Plan a policy document for the city. The Green Cities program of the bank is 2.5 billion program framework to support cities to identify, benchmark, prioritize, and invest in green city measures. The strategy angle involves green city action plans and policy dialogue with stakeholders and the cities. We also facilitate and stimulate green city infrastructure investments, which means we invest those investments that are identified as green, and that can be in the sectors of urban transport, district energy, solid waste, renewables, smart solutions, water, wastewater, building energy efficiency, distribution, street lighting, climate change resilience, nature-based solutions, and all. We also use this opportunity to build the capacity within the city administrators and key stakeholders. And we support access to green finance, as once these are identified as green investments, there are some concessional financings that are available in the market to push those investments further. To give you an example, how we select a green project to finance, we have to have climate mitigation impacts measurable, and it should reduce the greenhouse emissions by at least 20% or improve energy efficiency at least 20% if we are including a new project for financing under this program.
Thank you very much, Adil. So moving to Ahmetcan. Ahmetcan, ICBC is also in the forefront to finance and Turkey's leading green projects, most of which have essential contribution in the field of renewable energy generation. When discussing ESG integration and impact investing, the new market players often have 2 common assumptions, which are fundamentally no longer true. First, that sustainable finance is still a niche, risky subsector of the finance universe. And second, that one has to give up profits to have a positive impact in the world. As an investment banker who is an active player in Turkey's successful renewable energy market, do you think corporates and investors are being gradually convinced out of these beliefs? Do ESG integration and impact investing require the same process and expertise as traditional investing? And are there proficiencies necessary to overcome unique challenges, or perhaps this ever-developing subsector allows for different investment opportunities that help overcome the unwise of the traditional financing models?
Said, thank you very much for your exhaustive question. I will try to give some headlines with regards to the various questions you have asked. So I will actually, in order to be more simple, I will just divide my question into 3 parts, and will give my answers scattered around these 3 headlines. First, I would like to speak about the Republic of China's point of view. Then I will go to ICBC Group's in global sense the point of view, and then I will summarize my speech with ICBC Turkey Investment Banking Project Finance Department's point of view, which has been shaped actually by ICBC headquarters. So when we start with Republic of China's point of view, As you know, China is the largest emitter and remains actually heavily dependent on coal. As of today, the installed capacity of China is 2,200 gigawatts. And however, President Xi Jinping also made a statement about it recently. The country is planning to shift towards a clean energy, led by concerns over, of course, the impacts of air pollution, climate change, as well as its keenness to expand its new markets. So in this regard, of course, we are also, I mean, China is also a pledge, its pledge as a part of Paris Agreement. The target is to source 20% at least of its energy in 2030 from low carbon sources. So actually there is also a big work going on, and this is like one of the main focuses currently. And also, maybe some of you know, China is already the leading energy production with its figures and largest producers of wind and solar energy. So there is a potential which can be canalized in future more easily. So this is Chinese point of view. When we look at the ICBC actually point of view, in global arena, as you know, ICBC has been one of the state banks, is actively implemented the national concept of green development and sustainable development strategy, especially after President Xi Jinping's statements. And with this, regarded green credit strengthening as a key strategy for long-term pursuit. So it's comprehensively carried out green finance from the aspects of credit policy, management process, business innovation, and its own performance. So this gave actually full support to the development of green industries, reinforced the prevention and control of the environmental and social risks, and continuously promoted low carbon operation to improve economic, social, and ecological benefit, and set the example of a responsible, state-owned, leading commercial bank. So when I move forward, I can say that ICBC has a corporate social responsibility and consumer protection committee, which is actually serving this aim also. So we are also getting the directives as the other 47 branches of ICBC throughout the globe. And as the end of 2019, just to give more concrete numbers, we see that ICBC actually committed $200 million only for this kind of projects, and the budgets are being expanding. So as a bank, we are being more sensitive than we were yesterday. When we look at ICBC Turkey, as you know, some of you, I mean, we have been established here in 2015, and our department is established in 2016. So from that day on, we are dedicated to form tailor-made solutions for the long-term financing needs of our clients, both economically, environmentally, and socially responsible to the society that we are serving. So in this regard, we have been participated more than several deals in green energy, green financing, and we are planning to continue in future. So continuously, we aim to add significant value to the development of Turkey and China with green renewable projects, while considering social responsibilities with respect to the environment, society, and corporate governments, and also precision of poverty alleviation, corporate culture, and strategy. Because, Said, we are actually aware of one fact very well. If mankind do not protect the nature, nature will protect itself. So we need to take action. So this is very well noted by our end. And in order to move forward, as maybe some of you know, Turkey is also making big steps right now. And we are proud to be a part of Turkey's first integrated solar module factory, which has been actually opened by President Erdogan in August 19 this year. And we are also very happy that Chinese solar technology has been transferred to Turkey. And hopefully we will also participate in 1,000 megawatt solar, and in future, hopefully wind power plants. So ICBC will continue to provide its full support to Turkish market, even though we are a new player, so to say, in the Turkish finance markets. And Said, I will just simply conclude my words with saying that, as an answer of your question, corporates and investors are being gradually convinced out of the importance and requirement of environmental, social, and governance integration and impact on the projects to the considered perspective of financial institutions with regards to the conditions for financing the projects. And we see that now investors are also more sensitive. They also understand, acknowledge that the projects are not only are not only an output of numbers. The human factor, the environment factor, the habitat are being considered, because as all citizens of the world, we had a hard landing because of this corona. So I think we are also good at adjusting ourselves. So as a bank, we are also seeing this mentality both from our side, our end, and from the sponsor side, which is good for the society, for the world. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ahmetcan. Thank you. I mean, both EBRD and ICBC said that they are committed to increase their financing in Turkey with respect to the green products. So from a borrower perspective, I just want to ask a question to Nihal. What changes are needed to increase the offshore lending to the Turkish energy deals? And from a borrower's point of view, what would you consider the ideal financing mix for energy projects in Turkey? And what would be the key criteria for foreign banks when making commercial loans available to investors in Turkish energy sector?
Thank you very much. We will see that financial markets will take the lead to facilitate the movement of the capital towards meeting the need of society, to protect the impact of climate change, and to secure the future generation sources. Through financial markets, the capital will be remobilizing, and the upscaled financing activities will focus on domestic and global transition to climate resilient future. It means we are entering into a transition period, which will have impact on social, economic, and environmental pillars of society. In this road, it's not just the targets and commitments that countries had made, but all the implementations to be financed have the same significant importance. This is where the finance markets will bring expertise and creativity by using innovative methods when current criteria do not serve the purpose. The important thing is here, not replicating the work already done. We can say that sustainable and green finance will be one of the mainstream funding activities in coming years. Reverting back to your question, the reality of the market is not just the financing energy sector in Turkey, it is financing the global sustainability targets by taking into consideration of the local market foundations and opportunities. From a borrower perspective, this sustainability has a multidisciplinary character and involves mutual efforts of many different sectors. To reduce resource use and environmental impacts while increasing competitiveness requires a decisive technological transition to have economically feasible projects. As Skylion, we are not just the owner of a landmark renewable projects, but we are also a technology developer and manufacturer of one of the most important tools of sustainability panels. Therefore, the availability of sufficient raw materials provided by a strong commodity supply chain to have productive cross-sectoral habitat supporting the energy sector by research and development activities, opportunity of having an environment where the green tech innovations can grow have the same level of importance. So these should be financed by the financial market too. As you know, sustainability is all about be careful with the sources. Where the sustainability development goals are global, Turkey aims to achieve these goals by energy self-sufficiency and local supply security. So we are experiencing a paradigm shift regarding the source management, which is directly linked to localization, local panels, local turbines, local energy storage units, local electrical cars. We can continue listing. There is an action-reaction situation. financial markets will have key criteria to provide funding based on secured cash flow, profitable and feasible projects. But at the same time, they will have an initiator role while the private sector is carrying most of the development and business risk of this transition period. That's why we are expecting the financial market practitioners to develop new capabilities and skills to recognize the expertise on the ground, to identify the needs of the real practitioners, and scale up the innovations to become more attractive of the sectors who have still higher costs to invest. Now, financial market needs to be evolved due to the economic and industrial policies, which underlines reducing the import dependency, keeping pace with the latest technology trends, as well as the climate change mitigations and adaptation policies which are implementing globally. The upcoming green financing will benefit from conventional financing funded by green bonds, sustainability-linked loans, green bonds. On the other hand, we are expecting to increase the portion of venture capital market actors, which are specifically designed to finance the clean technology, green tech, and greens itself. Engaging the energy market with this holistic approach would be eventually strengthen the market in Turkey, and it will contribute to global sustainability targets.
Thank you, Nihal. Thank you very much. I mean, it's quite insightful. You know, I have a question. So we as legal advisor view ESG to be predominantly about risk management. As a sustainable finance expert, would you agree on this? And what are the new metrics and methodologies to assess environmental risk and opportunities in terms of the finance sector? How are ESG-driven eligible projects differentiated and in terms of sustainability debts? Are there standardized KPIs accommodated in the market? Also, which of the financing models and instruments do you perceive are the most efficient in the Turkish market? Which one do you think is more viable in the long run, investing in corporates that overall qualify certain sustainability benchmarks through performance-based instruments, or green projects where proceeds of the financing must be allocated to tangible sustainability efforts?
I will try to answer the questions in an order. So actually, you're right. Despite the ESG is described as a risk assessment of environmental, social, and governance factors and identifying the growth opportunities, it has been predominantly applied for risk management processes. In recent years, the opportunity part accelerated with several financial practices. And the metrics and the methodologies for ESG assessments are adapted for financial institutions due to their main facilities. For finance sector, there are two scopes of ESG management. The first one is for internal impacts, like the impacts coming from their own business processes, like environmental impacts of their own buildings, electricity and heat and water consumptions, H&S impacts, greenhouse gas emissions arising from main facilities. But of course, it's not limited with the main impacts, the main business impacts. The most important part is the ESG management of the companies financed and funded by the financial institutions, funded by banks. Each FIs needs to assess their non-financial risks, environmental, social, and governance risks and opportunities of their portfolio. And they need to establish a mitigation plan and need a plan, ESOP, environmental and social managed action plan for determined risks and determines risks of these companies. As İşbank, we sustain all the new greenfield investments with an investment amount of $10 million. And not limited with these new investment projects, we sustain brownfield projects like acquisitions, privatizations, refinancing of projects to the ESG assessments. And we have our own tool developed by independent consultant. And this tool has 26 questions arising from ESG management, ESG impacts, ESG components of like air quality, water management, HSE management, involuntary resettlement, which is really important impact as social impact. So as a result of these assessments, we determine a risk score and conduct a mitigation plan for each investment due to this risk score. We determine the strengths and the opportunities arising from the projects and develop a sustainable finance products for this investment basis assessment. And the financial sector is having a strong desire on having ESG driving portfolio and improving their asset quality. So each bank targeting to enhance the inclusion of ESG driving portfolio, and in Turkey, commercial banks commit to have ESG assessment for investment and project finance transaction. But as we do, each of them are targeting to decrease their limits and increasing their inclusion and sustain the corporate commercial, even if the SMEs, small medium enterprises, to ESG assessment. And the ESG driven eligible projects differentiated due to risk assessment projects and compliance of their ESAP, as I mentioned before, which is developed by a third-party environmental consultant to manage their ESG risks. So it's not only about complying with international standards, also, as you know, we can conduct an ESG performance, ESG ratings by independent rating agencies as well. And the last question, we determine KPIs in alignment with the companies and specify the investment loans as green, sustainable, or sustainable linked loans. And there are not any standardized KPI in the market because it should be determined due to the nature of the process. As you know, each company has different ESG levels and different from others, applying some KPIs for every sector and kind of investments. It won't be beneficial to improve ESG. It won't be so beneficial to apply the same KPIs for each companies, each sectors. It's not beneficial because we are aiming to increase the ESG performance of the companies. So we need to encourage them to just maximize their positive impacts and decrease their negative impacts. But I can say that the most common ones are the ESG ratings and women employment and local employment, energy efficiency, corporate social responsibility, or emission reduction, and etc. Comparing the financial models and instruments and choosing one to another doesn't seem so target-based to me. So because in the long run, banks need to invest in green projects and the brown projects at the same time, but there's a difference between them. The banks, the financial institution, has to enforce the companies, for the investors, for the green investments, to design their projects ESG oriented and avoid the ESG impacts in the beginning. And for the brown projects, as you know, we can't just stop the invest on brown projects because Turkey is a developing country and we need the remaining brown projects. And I think that there's going to be more brown projects to be constructed in the future. So our aim is just to avoid. We can't avoid their impacts because they're already in process, but we can just reduce their impacts by ESG assessments and these actions to be taken. So the targets needed to be focused on transition, from brown projects to green projects, but improving the ESG performances of the remaining brown projects and adopting them, and also assessing the ESG risks of the brown projects and giving best effort to avoid, mitigate, and compensate their negative impact.
Thank you very much. I mean, it's quite insightful. I mean, speaking of the projects in Turkey, so anyhow, my next question is to you. I mean, in August 2020, Kalyon Group opened Turkey's first and Europe and Middle East only integrated solar panel manufacturing facility. The projected annual capacity of the facility was initially 500 megawatt, and quite recently, Kalyon Group has confirmed that they aim to double this capacity by June 2021. The facility will produce solar panels for the local 1 gigawatt Konya Karapınar solar power plant, in which Kalyon is investing around $1 billion. So, I mean, it is estimated that the Konya Karapınar solar power plant will meet the annual energy needs of 2 million people in Turkey and will prevent 1.5 million tons of fossil waste and carbon emissions. As a leading conglomerate targeting to contribute in the Turkish economy in an environmentally conscious manner, what accountabilities have you set for ESG-related performance?
Yes, as Kalyon, we are closely monitoring the development of ESG principles, which are the tools of how sustainability can be implemented into the business life. However, there are many concepts and many institutions. After the initiation of World Economic Forum, IFRS, European Union, Accounting Standard Boards, United Kingdom, Turkish Capital Market Board, even some of the pioneer Turkish banks, almost every institution took action. The challenge is how we can implement a risk management system while the ESG accountability criteria are still under development globally, while we are counting down every day on environmental issues such as climate change, water supply, and energy. Our perspective, that's why it's more practical and action-based to ensure an immediate contribution to the pillars of ESG, since ESG is all about to identify the actionable solutions for the success of the sustainability efforts. So we have three main foundations: identification, to develop ESG strategy and development plan for each business line; impact assessment, to assess the project's impact on company, on environment, and on our stakeholders; training and capacity building, to create an awareness among practitioners and corporate leaders, which is the real hidden gem. These will enable us to have credible, understandable, replicable know-how, which eventually becomes subject to external assurance. Therefore, Kalyon Holding Board took three main actions. Environmental and production policy has been released. The Kalyon Solar PV Academy has been established to supervise the accumulation of know-how. In addition to that, to provide trainings such as Sustainability Awareness Module, Corporate Innovative Contribution Program, and Efficiency Leadership Program. Also, they are developing an audit system to set accountable targets for our supply chain regarding ESG principles. Kalyon R&D Center has been assigned for being a hub of sustainability efforts for an effective management by analyzing all variables that can be penetrated to manufacturing activities. Here, I would like to give you some examples from our ongoing process of ESG case studies. We have started a sustainability contribution system to encourage our on-site practitioners after training. I mentioned this as a hidden gem. I'd like to give you an example. For example, we saved 280 tons carton for only 2020 with a new panel packaging system developed by our practitioners in factory. In addition to that, we set material source efficiency targets by identifying KPIs for resource consumption levels. A manufacturing execution system has been established to ensure a continuous monitoring on what we are consuming. The third one is my favorite. The self-generated building targets have identified as a total 6 megawatt rooftop power plant. By covering Kalyon-owned buildings, we reached 55% of our targets since September 2020, and commitments will be completed in coming months. So as Kalyon, we believe to have a proactive way of focusing on the areas which need enhancement as an urgent intervention. It will have a positive effect in long-term results, while the worldwide organizations developing accountability standards. We also believe that proven case studies are the real foundation of the globally applicable standards. Therefore, we are hoping to contribute to ESG accountability in Turkey with our case studies.
Thank you very much, Nihal. Thank you. Ünay, with respect to, as Turkey İş Bankası is amongst those listed in Borsa İstanbul Sustainability Index, does the index offer an environment where listed companies can compare their sustainability performance on both domestic and global levels through standardized methodologies, which in turn allows for them to access clients' capital and lower cost of financing opportunities?
The BIST Sustainability Index aims to provide benchmark for Borsa companies, as we know, with a high performance on corporate sustainability and to increase awareness, knowledge, and the practice ESG in Turkey. Moreover, the index is a platform for institutional investors to demonstrate their commitment to companies and managing the ESG issues with high performance. And Borsa İstanbul has signed an agreement, as you mentioned, with IRIS to create a BIST Sustainable Index in Turkey in 2014. And IRIS conducted an assessment based on ESG criteria to the companies who want to involve this index. The ESG criteria and for the different sectors, actually, because in 2015, IRIS reversed the ESG criteria to make it understandable for companies, and the coverage of the methodology has been enhanced by the inclusion of the banks. Banks are pretty different from companies, especially the construction and the manufacturing companies, as you know. And 61 companies are subjected to ESG assessment and listed in Sustainable Index in 2020. As you asked, the index provides a competitive advantage to Turkish companies managing their corporate risks and opportunities effectively. But the index and the index reflects companies' an approach to important ESG issues, and including like global warming, draining, and neutral resources, and HSE, and etc. The index offers companies the opportunity to compare their sustainability performances on both local and global level. The index provides the company the visibility and the prestige as well by adding their name to the list. The index aiming to attract the responsible investors. You know, this is the new term, the responsible investors in the world globally. The people, the investors, even the individuals are seeking ESG driven, like a sustainable point of view at the companies who are producing or investing more responsible. And the index aiming to attract the responsible investors to invest to the companies stated in the index, which adopt principles of sustainability and corporate governance. Sustainable index is very important in the market, as we know, but because of the index encourages companies to develop environmental and social management systems, as we did, in 2013 and improve their ESG performances. İşbank also conducted a due diligence and a gap analysis to see the gaps between the international requirements and the ESG related requirements and its own business. And after that, determining the gaps between the business as usual and targeted ESG driven management system, İşbank also established an ESAP to reach targeted systems. And the all companies who were listed in the index did the same processes as well. The index encouraged the companies to establish ESG systems and attracting investors to the listed companies. But of course, the companies needed to improve their system and move it one step forward to reach clients, capital, or lower cost financing. It's not enough actually to be listed in BIST sustainable index. As you know, the standards in global markets is rising at every step, and the banks need to comply with these high standards, especially the international standards based on Equator principles, and also EBRD funds providing the funds based on Equator principles as well, but they have their own performance requirements. And this brings new commitments to the banks who wants to have IFI's financial packages. And the banks needs to give more commitments to meet the IFI's requirements and to reach the lower cost fundings. And they need to apply this ESG assessment to their customers. Each bank has their own systems, tools, and roadmaps in different ways. In the past, it was enough to subject the IFI funded projects, only the IFI packages, IFI funded customers, these ENS risk management assessments, I'm sorry. But upcoming stage, the IFIs provide asset class financial packages, like they provide a financial package, but they want they want the banks to apply this ESG management, ESG assessment to all asset class. If they provide the financing, these funds for SMEs, they want İşbank to apply ESG system to all SMEs of their portfolio, not only the funds. Example, the EBRD funded companies, EBRD funded funds. So it takes the level one step forward. And that means you can't conduct ENS risk assessment only for IFI's resource projects, loans you undertake to conduct, ENS risk management, the agreed asset class as well. SMEs, commercial or corporate asset class, it can be. This aims to enhance inclusion of risk management and increase the ESG performances of all sectors. This is also a great amount of ESG-oriented responsible. There is also a great amount of ESG-oriented responsible investors. So the companies aim to reach more investors, ESG-related management, and disclosure of their performances.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ünay. I mean, İdil, we talk about, actually all participants talk about enthusiasm, encouragement regarding the ESG products, but reports on the UN 2030 agenda shows that we still face challenges in terms of implementation and accountability, particularly in relation to disclosure and reporting by corporates on ESG-driven risks. Given ESG is to be treated as investment grade calculated based on the fundamental data, which is material to investment allocation decision, how do you manage such data gaps as an IFI?
Thank you very much. Before addressing it, I think I would like to make a couple of points on how we measure. I think Ünal Hanım already gave the bank's perspective very well, and also she touched based on their bank's own investments and how would EBRD apply the performance standards through the EBRD's investments through the banks. I would like to give the perspective that how we measure ourselves on the green investments. As I have just summarized the green economy transition targets of the overall bank's investments, we first identify the projects, whether it's green or not, and we have to keep our target of 50% of the bank's money go to green investments in the next 5 years. So we are, when we are investing, we are always mindful of that. So be it a greenhouse gas emission decreasing project or an energy efficiency improvement project, once we identify the project, we set targets to ourselves based on the benchmarks that we have identified while we are assessing the project. I'd like to take the example from our green cities. Izmir Metropolitan Municipality is a green city that we have included in the green city framework of the bank. Through this green city, we have developed a green city action plan together with our advisors and together with the city. And this green city action plan have become a policy document for the city as the priorities and the identified challenges and the mitigants have been presented to the municipal council and approved by the municipal council. We financed one metro project, Narlıdere Metro, under the Green City envelope for Izmir. And we are working on a new project, Buca Metro, again as a follow-up green investment under the Green City program for Izmir. Metro projects significantly reduce high traffic congestion and noise pollution and replace high carbon modes such as urban buses, minibuses that use fossil fuels, achieving transport model shift, thereby reduce greenhouse gases and air pollutant emissions. In these projects, we set targets for carbon dioxide emission decrease per year, nitrogen oxide per year, and annual reduction in particulate matter emissions. Also, the investment has to serve a certain amount of people in order to create that amount of impact. So taking from there to the environmental and ESG standards, we scrutinize all projects, all investments of the bank in various aspects, but starting with environmental, social, and governance practices. Just like we are running financial, legal, and technical due diligence, we are running due diligence on those through third parties, third-party consultants, like Ünal Hanım mentioned. We have our own performance criteria, performance requirements about environmental and social impacts, labor and working conditions, resource efficiency, pollution prevention and control, health and safety, land acquisition, involuntary settlement, economic displacement, biodiversity conservation, indigenous peoples, cultural heritage, and lastly, the information disclosure and stakeholder engagement. We expect the investors to develop action plans to close the gaps identified at the very beginning. So under these action plans, we recently started addressing gender inclusion deficiencies, assessment and reporting on gender-based violence as well. So we enhance to seek the policies regarding equal opportunities for all, not only for the environmental effects. So we periodically review the progress in actions identified in those plans. We work with cities, if we were working with cities, we provide consultant support to monitor, to help and monitor and report back to us throughout the investment period. The all ESG policy development and respective reporting is a covenant in our loan agreements, both for private and public sector. In terms of disclosure, while environmental social action plan is a document that has been agreed between the client, between the borrower and the bank, we require publishment of non-technical summary of the projects and the state engagement plan, stakeholder engagement plan in the websites while we are investing in the project, so that it's more transparent for EBRD investments.
Thank you, Idil. Thank you very much. I'm Claire, after a long break, so your question. Despite the challenges presented by COVID-19 pandemic, and the sustainability bond market saw strong growth in the year 2020, with a total issuance in the amount of around $70 billion. So green loans and sustainability linked loans, however, both decreased by 15% over the previous year. How do you project the volume of sustainable finance to behave overall in the forthcoming years? And which of the sustainable finance instruments do you think will be more demanded?
Thanks, Aid. Yeah, so we did have a little drop in sustainability linked loan or sustainability loans, but that was really because of an overall drop in loans. So it was just in line with the market. You might remember that Q2 of 2020 was quite a slow quarter due to COVID. And yes, indeed, sustainability linked bonds has grown. In fact, sustainability linked bonds has grown from nothing over the last year. So it's becoming quite a popular product. I mean, for me, there's only one way this market is going, and that's up. We've all seen the huge numbers of sort of shouted around how much investments you need in ESG related investments. So I think $80 trillion is the latest investment gap that I've heard about. It's probably increased. And also, you know, we've heard quite a lot of targets from the panel today in terms of their support of ESG related investments. I mean, we're seeing some other banks, you know, come out with, you know, we saw in the last week, $2.5 trillion of support in the next decade announced by more than one bank. So, I mean, those numbers are huge, and it can only mean that they're focusing on ESG investments. In terms of which type of product will be the most popular, I suspect everyone on the call is sort of familiar with the general distinction between, you know, what we call green bonds or loans and then sustainability linked. So one is a use of proceeds based financing, so the money has to go to the particular product, and one is sustainability linked, so usually the margin, but some sort of economic factor depends on performance. I think that the sustainability linked debt will be very popular because of its ease of application to so many companies. I mean, every company really, every issuer could focus on sustainability linked. And we don't need a separate transition debt product. The sustainability linked debt offers you a transition product because you're saying, I've got this, you know, this is my trajectory. I'm going to make these improvements. If I hit them, you'll reward me. If I don't, you'll penalize me. I mean, that's a very powerful tool at its most basic. I think there's lots of questions around sustainability linked debt though. You know, what are the KPIs? We've heard, you know, I think from Idil and from Unai about different standards that they're applying within the bank. And we haven't got sort of this common standard of what a KPI should look like and how, you know, how you would treat it between different reviewers. You know, how ambitious does it need to be? Is it got to be a bit better than they're currently doing, or does it have to be Paris aligned? And what even does Paris aligned mean? There's no one pathway that everyone's agreed on that's the path to Paris. You know, also, you know, are you going to reward a company who's a clean company and getting a bit cleaner? Or are you going to focus on those companies that are, you know, big emitters and are able to, you know, end up somewhere that's still high emissions, but is much better than where they're starting from? You know, who should we be focusing on in the financial sector? I think if I can challenge a little bit some of the things I've heard, I mean, I thought it was interesting talking about, financing brown. And I think there was a suggestion that, if there's a project in progress, we have to carry on because we can't sort of afford to stop those projects in their tracks. I think we need to look at that because I think COVID has shown us we can make big changes in a short period of time, and we need to make big changes for climate. We need to do that. And, it might be expensive to stop, but can we afford to lock in, fossil fuel use, for example, for the next 30 years by carrying on with the project? So I think we do need to be a bit more ambitious and not just think about all the green stuff we're doing, but also really focus on the not so green stuff that we are still doing as a financial sector. We are still doing a lot of that. Looking forward, if I can, so social, I think, is going to be a really key theme. Idil mentioned EBRD's inclusion standards, yeah. And April, so this time last year, we had social overtook green issuance for the first time ever. And we think just transition is going to be a big theme this year. We're doing some work with the Institute of the Business and Human Rights on how financial institutions should understand just transition and how they might think about implementing them in their principles and processes and transactions. I think there are two challenges, just to leave you on this thought, what we can do. One is scaling up. We have to apply the techniques that we've got at a much greater scale, much quicker, much higher volume. We need to get the money to the SMEs. I thought the Ishbank points around the covered loan programs and similar was really interesting, but we need much, much more of that. We need to go into different markets. We can't just be funding the mega projects. And then we need to work out how we finance mitigation measures. So in some ways, what we've funded so far is quite easy. We've done some big renewables power projects. Well, they've got an obvious source of revenue, and actually they're very competitive now, following a decade of proven technology and lower costs. And we fund things that prioritize energy and material efficiency. Well, they're normally, it's normally a good thing to do anyway, right? That's a sensible business position. Be efficient with your materials. Great. What about mitigation measures that will be necessary, but we don't have a funding structure for? How are we going to fund those? And there are going to be lots of those. I think, not to be depressing, but, we're targeting 1.5 degrees under Paris. We're on track for 3.7 degrees of warming. The IPCC says that's catastrophic. So we know we need mitigation measures. How are we going to get the money to finance those? Because there'll be huge social impacts if we can't. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Claire. It's just like a great overall summary, I would say. My question the last question to Ahmetcan. I mean, we, talk about the COVID-19 effects globally. Claire covered that. I mean, despite that, there's an increase on that one. But just, from a Turkey perspective, what you observe has been the influence of the COVID-19 pandemic on companies' sustainability efforts in Turkey. And it seems that for some investors and corporates, COVID-19 has been a stumbling block in realizing their ESG commitments. Whereas others find this is an opportunity to fast-track ESG initiatives with support of accelerated sustainability trends, such as remote working and reduced travel. Do you consider there are unproportionate impacts COVID-19 had on certain corporates or investors' way of implementing the ESG-driven principles in their cultures? Additionally, given the screening of corporate performance involves so many different data points, ranging from emission levels through the diversity, business ethics, and corporate governance, as an investment bank, what do you think can be done to encourage investment options to report on their ESG performance?
Thank you, Said. Actually, not much left to say, but I will just provide maybe some points. Add some points. So, as you know, with the COVID-19, of course, we see that the world has been driven into uncharted territories. So we also see this effect in our projects. Of course, actually, Claire was right. We always talk about the mega projects, landmark projects, but this is not the reality of the world. So there are SMEs and even little entrepreneurs that has to be taken into account. But from the experiences we had, I will just try to summarize your questions. So actually, Said, when we look at the projects, the ongoing construction progress is what we see with regards to ESG challenges, let's say, that we see a labor force problem, because we see that the people working there, both blue collars and white collars, had, infected. Therefore, like some of the construction was not going as it has been scheduled, but as banks, I mean, we always provided the flexibility, and of course we are also human beings, so we always provide the patience and if required waivers and extensions in order to somehow mitigate and assist the companies who are struggling. We also see that in correlation, supply of machine and equipment problems, you know, there was some logistic problems, some cargo problems that has not been, I mean, like scarcity of cargos. So we also see that. And we also see actually permission problems, licensing problems, because like the governmental officers, that were busy with some other stuff, or they weren't present there, or the signatories was infected also. Therefore, we see that less working hours. So some processes have been delayed, but this is normal, and we cannot really currently analyze the full impact of COVID to the sectors, to the ESGs. We just have preliminary thought, we just have experiences which we are now collecting in our big data in order to come out with the result maybe in future. In order to proceed, as I said, ICBC Turkey will continue to provide and support with a start green financing and then waste water treatments, recycling, etc. That will have a contribution to society for sure. And from our opinion, the basic thing that has to be done actually is to create more funds that will be in relation to ESG programs. And this will, of course, have better commercial terms so that it will also encourage the projects and the owners, the borrowers to apply for these funds. Of course, this has to be in some classification. So apart from everything, actually, what we need will be a master will. So this means government, authorities, whatever you want to call. So this has to lead. After this lead, the funds has to be provided, I mean, formed, established, and with the ESG standards being set. And here I think the S for that ESG is S, the culture flavor shall be taken into account. So an Italian society's expectation and Turkish society's expectation will not be the same. So you cannot just say, okay, Italians accepted this, Europeans accepted this, so in Turkey, please accept this. So this little tiny but big difference shall be really taken into account, also by the fund providers. Of course, there should be an action plan. So I think what we need to teach the borrowers in future, how the action plan should look like and what other things that they need to take into account of. Of course, monitoring is important. And as Claire has also mentioned, I also agree to the concept of grading in order to monitor annually, semi-annually, however you want to reach, but like, and maybe if there is a breach, that interest rate, let's say, to be very simple, has to be increased or some penalties has to be taken into account in order to have a monitoring. But this monitoring, as I say, shall be supported by master will, because as lenders, we also have some other visions and we also have some other aims. So it shouldn't be really expected that the lenders shall be also the watchguards of the loans that has been provided. So there should be a strong coordination with the government authorities if necessary. And apart from that, in order to add, now, you know, the old feed-in tariff mechanism is gone. So with regards to green financing, there is a new implementation that we will see after 30th of June 2021, and we'll see how the market will react to this, how the banks will react to this with regards to the appetite to provide funding and to invest with these new terms. This is something that is on our end. And when we look at the Turkish conglomerates' performances with regards to ESG, I think we are in somewhere, but we should also, I mean, raise our awareness and become more like high-level thinkers of ESGs. And as I say, from the financing point of view, what we can do as banks, just to put some kind of a reward punishment mechanism that will encourage more firms to follow and see the benefits, and also reflect these benefits that they get financially to the environment by means of environment, social and governance. So these are my basic preliminary ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, thank you very much to our panelists for their invaluable insights and a vibrant discussion. I mean, with your contribution as representatives of different stakeholders in a dialogue to better understand ESG-related issues, we have spurred some solution-oriented responses to ways to mitigating and adapting their costs to their risk. So thank you very much for everyone listening us. Thank you.
Thanks very much, guys.